Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. For the third week in a row, it is a happy Victory Monday to all the Pewter people and Bucs fans, as now, with the Bucs being 7-6 after defeating the Raiders yesterday, 28-13, they control their own destiny in the NFC South. So we're going to further recap the game, give some injury updates, and take a little peek at what's ahead for the Buccaneers on today's show. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is the face that runs the place at PewterReport.com and the fellow co-host of this podcast, Scott Reynolds. Scott, it's been 24 hours since the Bucs last won. How do we feel now, a little further removed from the game compared to yesterday?
I think pretty good, right? If you look at the game yesterday, 28-13, some people have some issues with what happened offensively, right? Certainly with Baker Mayfield. I get that, but here's the thing: we have to keep a couple things in mind before we lose our sanity here, right? The Bucs did roll up 425 yards of offense. They ran for 152 yards. They converted over, I think, 42% of their third down conversions. And more importantly, they scored 4 touchdowns, Matt. They put 28 points on the board.
Yes.
And yes, it was against a lesser Raiders team, a lesser Raiders defense. I get all those things. But Baker Mayfield didn't have a great game. And that's really the end of it. It wasn't like the offense was totally inept. Wasn't like the offensive line didn't do a very good job. I think some of those sacks were on Baker holding on to the ball too long. And if there's one thing that I'll say about Baker Mayfield, and I've been on a couple podcasts, if I said this last night, please forgive me if I'm going to repeat myself here for about 20 seconds, but I've seen a lot of bad quarterback play in Tampa Bay. Trent Dilfer, Josh Freeman, Jameis Winston, others that once the downward spiral starts, it doesn't stop, right? And a bad day becomes a worse day. The thing about Baker that I appreciate is he's able to pull the rabbit out of the hat sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes he can rally and have that last final drive where he gets the field goal, gets the touchdown, whatever. And I was just glad to see that the game ended on a high note with that dagger play, that touchdown to Jalen McMillan. And it not only, like, as some might say, put the lipstick on the pig, right? And brightened up, the mood a little bit with another touchdown on the board. But I think that kind of stuff is important for not only Jalen McMillan, right, to score that second touchdown, boost his confidence, but also for Baker Mayfield to end on a more positive note. He still felt crappy about his game. He said at the podium that he was probably the worst
offensive player.
Exactly. Yeah. So, he's taking it hard, but at least the guy can rally a little bit, and I appreciate that about his game. So if this was the Vikings, if this was the playoff game, the wild card game at Raymond James Stadium that hopefully this team will get to by winning the division, they probably don't win yesterday with that level of performance. They got to play better. We know that. But yesterday it was enough, and they did what they needed to do. And you know what? They're on top of the NFC South right now, and it's a much better place to be than 3 games behind the Falcons.
Yeah, I think that's fair and true what you were saying about Baker's game. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Baker when we do roll call at 4:20. So I'll kind of save, some of that discussion for, 13, 14 minutes from now. But for Baker specifically, he does have that ability to wipe the slate clean and shake it off and get ready for, the next drive or whatever the case may be. And yes, it was the Raiders, but let's remember, the Raiders beat the Baltimore Ravens this year. So any given Sunday, you still want to get away with a win. And I think, they still scored 28 points. So for me, the biggest issue was the 3 turnovers that they had. Because if the Bucs had a couple of 3-and-outs or all of those turnover drives just ended with a punt instead, as Liam Cohen and Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield have talked about, ending every drive with a kick, regardless of if it's a punt or an extra point or whatever the case may be.
Or a field goal.
If those, or a field goal as well. If those interceptions or the fumble as well, if those were just punts or, the one time when they were in field goal range, if he doesn't throw that interception, think we're still looking at this game and saying, yeah, there's a little ups and downs, but hey, they scored 28 points. So
Yeah.
I think that's probably the biggest story, at least for me, what I was paying attention to and I guess concerned about. And also, I think Dritz924 brings up a great point. Complaining about Baker, we could be the Falcons and have a quarterback making $180 million who hasn't thrown a touchdown to his team literal month. So yeah, that's another
That's true.
look at it, choosing to look
Yeah.
at the bright side and glass half full.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is we got to remember Baker Mayfield is the best bargain in the NFC South. He got that $100 million contract over 3 years, but he's still the third highest paid quarterback in the South, right? Derek Carr is ahead of him, and then Kirk Cousins is ahead of him. So, who would you rather have, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, who's just about cooked right now? I think that's pretty apparent, right? He's just not the same guy he was, and this is going to be a huge catastrophe for the Falcons financially. But you know what? Hey, credit them for spending that first round pick on Michael Penix Jr. It doesn't look so bad right now. Right?
We laughed at it at the time.
Yeah. At the time, you're like, what are you doing? But now maybe it makes sense, right? Because now they might have to punt on Kirk Cousins sooner rather than later if he just cannot get out of this downward spiral that he's in. But yeah, I mean, I think, Baker's still that gritty leader. There's still a lot to like. And here's one thing I do like about Baker, and maybe it's a little maddening because it's with Jameis, it was a roller coaster in games, right? It's like,
yes,
like he would throw a touchdown to you, he'd throw a touchdown to me, meaning the other team, right? He kept both teams in the game at all times. With Baker, he can have an 80% completion percentage game against the Giants, and then, throw a couple picks against the Panthers, and then come out like gangbusters with 2 touchdowns in the first quarter. His ebbs and flows are more kind of game to game. And that's kind of a good thing because one bad game doesn't drip into the next, right? He's not on that downward slide that Kirk Cousins is, where he's thrown 8 touchdowns and 8 interceptions and no touchdowns over the last couple games, right? But he doesn't seem to get on those heaters either. Like if he has a great game one week, it doesn't mean he's going to have a great game the next week. But so it's a little bit of a different dynamic. So I guess my point is just because he's thrown a couple of interceptions in these last 2 games, he could go 2 or 3 games without a pick because he's shown the ability to do that as well.
Yeah, and I think like the comparisons to Jameis, and that's kind of what I'm going to talk about when roll call comes up in 10 minutes. I think the comparisons to Jameis are coming up a little bit more because Jameis is starting again for the Cleveland Browns. So he's had a lot of primetime games. And that was the big difference is that, like you said, both teams are in the game. Like it doesn't matter if you had a 28-point lead. Like he could throw 2 pick sixes.
That's right.
The game's right back in it. Where Baker, although there are concerns about his overall inconsistency, he's still way more consistent than Jameis Winston ever is or really ever will be. Right. So I think with Baker, you'll take the good with the bad because this season specifically, it's been so much more good than the opposite. And even Baker playing poorly, whether it was the Carolina game 2 weeks ago, which they won, or some of the other times it's blown up a little bit. It's never been like truly egregious and worrisome. And the big difference again for Baker and Jameis is there were times Jameis drops back, and there are a couple of quarterbacks I feel this way as well, where every time they drop back, it's like, oh my God, don't throw an interception. Please don't throw an interception. I don't have that feeling with Baker Mayfield, and that's a good thing. No, I'm confident that he's going to make the right play or make the right throw.
You're right. And I mean, 28 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. That's a far cry from 33 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, right? I mean, it's not even close in terms of the apples to oranges. You'd love as a quarterback, I think at any level, high school, college, pro, if you can be 4-1, right? I mean, look at Joe Burrow. What does he have? 30 touchdowns to lead the league, 5 interceptions. I mean, that's a fantastic season. Like that's ideal. Or like the ridiculous Aaron Rodgers numbers that he used to have, which is a handful of interceptions and then around 30 or 40 touchdowns, whatever. If you can have 4-1 in terms of your touchdown interception ratio, that's fantastic. I think most quarterbacks aspire to have at least a 3-1 touchdown interception ratio, right? You don't want the 2-1. You don't want the 20 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, or 30 touchdowns, 15, if you can avoid it, right? But, that's kind of the baseline. And I think Baker's still above that baseline a little bit. And so that's a good thing. And I still think there are more 3-touchdown games ahead of him this year, maybe without some interceptions too.
Yeah, and on top of that, Baker has a running game, which he didn't have last season. And the offense is just so fluid. Things are going well. I wouldn't say it's perfect or that the offense has been fantastic. It's looked fantastic at times. But the Bucs just very much feel like, at least on the offensive side, more of a complete unit.
Yes.
Than they really have been over the last 3 seasons, going back to Tom Brady's last year in Tampa Bay before he retired for the second time. And I think that's a good sign overall, because the way that the Bucs can run the football, they can be in every single game, and I think they can win in different ways, which makes this matchup against the Chargers coming up, and obviously we'll preview that game on Wednesday's show. But that's what makes this matchup against the Chargers so intriguing, because it's a very, very different opponent, than stylistically than I think the Bucs have really gone up against this season. So I'm intrigued for how it will look.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I know we're just getting ready to kick off this show here. We got roll call coming up about 6 minutes, which we're excited about. But we're also excited about Wednesday's show. As much as we're dialed in today, we want you to be dialed in on Wednesday. That's our Bucs Chargers preview. There's Cade Otton. He's had a really good season and kind of came back to life a little bit in the receiving department, shook off some drops that he had the last couple of games. And maybe he's going to be that opposite guy that we kind of envisioned when Mike Evans came back. Maybe it'll be Evans and Cade Otton, and maybe a guy like Jalen McMillan joins the party too. But Bucs Chargers preview, that's coming at you 4:00 here on Pewter Report TV on Wednesday. So again, we're in the must win game alert stage, folks. Again, it's going to be this way the entire season. This team has got to continue to win. They are in control of their own destiny now. That's where you want to be if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's not just about catching the Falcons now. You've done that. Now, as Todd Bowles said wisely after the game, it's one thing to get in this position where you have the lead. It's another thing to keep the lead, and that's the important thing going forward for the Buccaneers. They'll have that opportunity Sunday against the Chargers, and which is going to be a tough game. This is the last game on the schedule against a team with a winning record. But, Matt, at the same time, not to get too far ahead, but that Dallas game on Sunday Night Football the next week, right? That's a primetime game. The Buccaneers are 0-3 in primetime. So that's a bit of a concern. Then you look at the next 2 games, and I'm not trying to be negative here. I'm just trying to throw it out there and just say, hey, don't look at the records and think this is going to be easy, because guess what? 9 minutes into yesterday's game in the third quarter, looked like the Raiders were going to score and take the lead, if not for Tykeith Smith's interception. So you can't take anything for granted. The Panthers are playing better football. We saw that last week in Charlotte in that overtime game. So the last 4 games of the Panthers have been win-win. Actually, the last 5 games for the Panthers. Win-win, close loss to Kansas City, overtime loss to Tampa, close loss against the Eagles. They're beating teams, Matt. They're winning close games against really good playoff caliber teams. This is a better Panthers team that will be coming back to Tampa. Very confident in Week 17 to play the Buccaneers. Then you got the Saints, who got another win. They're playing hard for their interim head coach. And we know that the Saints are 5-1 of the last 6 games here in Tampa against the Buccaneers. So this is going to be a fantastic finish, folks. Buckle up. It's not just this Chargers game. It's these next 3 games after that are going to be super entertaining and thrilling games, I think, for the Bucs.
Absolutely, Scott. You are spot on. The Bucs make it very entertaining one way or another. Sometimes it's aggravating, but the Panthers, Bucs just went to overtime against them. So to say that game's a lock or it's in the bag, absolutely not the case. They may catch a break with the Saints, because it looks like Derek Carr got injured and he's going to miss a couple of games. So feel bad for him. He's just had terrible injury history, really, in his career, but especially over the past couple of seasons. I am curious, too, with the game against the Cowboys. Yes, it is in prime time. And I know it's the Cowboys and it's glitz and glamour that comes with it. But they're such a bad team. They have their backup quarterback. I'm curious if that game gets flexed out for another one, just based on, the success or lack thereof that the Cowboys are having this season. They'd have to announce it somewhat soon, but I am curious if that one will get flexed out.
Yeah, and that's something that I've kind of pondered myself. if it was any other team but Dallas, Dallas gets those ratings for Sunday Night Football, right? So at least you have a team in Tampa Bay who's a division winner, at least right now, or in the mix for the division. Let's say that. Dallas may not be that team, but it still has that star power, pun intended, because they draw the national audience. So that might be the saving grace to keep that game there. There are some other, matchups. There's Washington and Philadelphia that weekend. That's big for
good.
playoff seeding, and I want to say there's another one as well.
I think Steelers-Ravens
Ravens,
their second game,
one.
which obviously is a big-time matchup. So there are some options.
There are, and at the same time, too, we always think that the primetime channels, right, the ESPN for Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, obviously is on NBC. But so we think that NBC is going to automatically get to make these plays. Fox and CBS, they still want to keep those marquee matchups too. So it's not like that the primetime channels was specifically Sunday. I guess that's the only game that gets flexed. It's not like NBC gets to call the shots and say, oh, we want this game, we want that game. It's a league decision. And Fox and CBS, they fight to keep those marquee matchups on their broadcasts, even if they're 1 o'clock or 4 or 4:25 kickoffs as well.
Yeah, that's why these contracts for television and media and all that stuff are gigantic numbers, because you want the biggest eyeballs, you want the biggest ratings, and nobody controls a day of the week like football does. So we'll see. A lot to come up though.
I was going to say, before we get to roll call, we do have some injury news we want to talk about. Let's start there, Matt. You were at the press conference today with Todd Bowles when he was talking about Antoine Winfield Jr.
Yeah, unfortunate news for Antoine Winfield Jr., obviously one of the leaders on this team and arguably the best player on defense. But he has a knee sprain, and Todd Bowles was very vague, as he typically is, said he'll be out a little while. And then there was a follow-up question about that, and he said a couple of games. Now, what does a couple of games mean? I don't totally know. I mean, there's only 4 games remaining in the season, so you assume this game probably at least next week as well. So, yeah, he's not going to be back for the time being. And let's remember, Jordan Whitehead's still on injured reserve, so the Bucs are going to be without their top 2 safeties at that position. And then Bucky Irving is the other big one that everybody's concerned about. Obviously, he barely played in the game due to a back injury that has flared up. They said if they can loosen his back up, he'll be good for this week. But that sounds like a big if. They got to try to get him loose. So who knows what they're going to be doing with Bucky Irving this week, trying to get a heating pad on that back and everything like that. And back injuries are so fluky, like you twist the wrong way and your back goes out or things of that nature. So it's going to be very touch and go when it comes to Bucky Irving specifically with that back injury. So really unfortunate about Antoine Winfield Jr. The news is a little bit better with Bucky Irving, but not that spectacular either.
Yep. So the good news for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is they have Ryan Neal back on the practice squad. You remember Ryan Neal, folks. He was the guy that got a lot of flack last year. But at least Christian Izien has been playing really well this season at just about every position in the secondary. So you have to figure he'll be replacing Antoine Winfield Jr., which he did for those 4 games when Winfield missed in weeks 2 through 5. And remember, he had that interception at Detroit, which was huge. So Izien goes back there. Kayvon Merriweather will play more of the box safety, that Jordan Whitehead role. And that's good news. Plus, too, Tyke Smith is also in the mix. He had a fantastic interception against Brock Bowers, really just in the nick of time. It looked like the Raiders were going to go up on the Bucs in the third quarter there after that monster 9-10 minute drive. So, it's the whack-a-mole thing, Matt.
Yep.
You get one guy back, you lose another one. That's how it's been this entire season. And just before you hit your roll call here, one thing too, and Todd Bowles addressed this, and I have confirmed this with multiple Bucs sources. Tampa Bay is not doing anything differently in terms of their practice schedule, in terms of their stretching. Bobby Slater, who is in charge of the team's training staff, and he's like the vice president of sports medicine, whatever. He got all of the accolades last year for keeping this team healthy. The Bucs were one of the healthiest teams. this is just a rash of fluke injuries. It's crazy what's happened because the pendulum has swung from Tampa Bay being one of the healthiest teams to not being a very healthy team. And it's maddening. And there's nobody more pissed off about it than him and Todd Bowles and Jason Light and all of these players that are going through these unfortunate injuries. But there's no common denominator that they've been able to figure out because they're same practice schedule, same routines, same stretching, same staff, everything, strength conditioning. It's all the same as it was last year. Why is it happening? They're going to do a deep dive in the offseason to try to figure out why.
Right. That's what Bowles mentioned today. He was like, last year we were praised for, how healthy we were. And then this year it's just kind of been a freak thing. He even went on to say that, Friday's practices are essentially a glorified walkthrough anyway. And injuries still happening. It happened again on a Friday practice with Josh Hayes got injured on a Friday. So just honestly surreal what's been going on. And another thing that very much feels surreal and fantastic really is when we do roll call every Monday show. We love doing this with our fans. We do it around 4:20. Sometimes we're fashionably late, especially if we're passionately talking about your favorite team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And one way we connect with all of our fans is because we have great fans all over the world. One of us will go on a conversation, if you will, about the Buccaneers. Today, I'll do that. And as I'm talking about the Bucs and Baker Mayfield specifically, if you want to start putting in the comments where you're watching the show from, we will put it up on the screen and give some personal shout-outs as well. So, want to get back to Baker Mayfield. I had a tweet yesterday that got some attention. Wasn't anything out of control, but some people weren't happy with it, calling me certain names in the comments, and that's fine. I could take it; it's no big deal. I actually find some of them funny with the insults. I can appreciate a good insult if that's what you're going with. But I think the context of this is important as well. So I tweeted this in the second quarter of the game yesterday when things are going downhill for the Buccaneers. And I said, Baker Mayfield is playing the same way that drove Bucs fans crazy watching Jameis Winston for several years. And what I meant by that tweet is in the moment, in that end of the first quarter and most of the second quarter, that's how Baker Mayfield was playing with the turnovers. I did not mean that Baker has been playing like Jameis Winston all season long. That has not been the case. There was a while where Baker led the NFL in touchdowns. He's had several great picture of Jameis Winston. Memories, right? I hate that jersey, though. But in that late first quarter and second quarter, Baker Mayfield was very much playing like Jameis Winston, in my opinion. So remember, he started out on fire. He was fantastic. He was 8 of 9 for 110 yards. He had 2 touchdowns in the first quarter. He was lights out. There is no doubt about it. But then something happened once he had his first turnover. And it was a good play by the defender. It was supposed to be a screen play. He was able to tip it and catch it to himself. But the next couple of drives by the Bucs, you had an interception. Then they immediately got the ball back because remember the Raiders fumbled it. Then Baker fumbled. Then the Raiders scored a touchdown. They went 3 and out. And then they had the interception right before halftime when Baker threw it into the end zone. So that's how the end of the first quarter and all of the second quarter went. Interception, fumble, punt, interception, end of the half. If you want to throw away the first interception and say that was just more of a freak athletic play, fine. We can argue about that some other time. But the fumble, to me, was one of the biggest issues because he saw the defender coming from a mile away. This was not like a blindside thing or Baker was looking in the other direction. He looked right at the defender that was blitzing and getting into the backfield. He even started to kind of tuck it a little bit and brace himself for the tackle because the play was done, and he still lost the football. So that was my issue with that one. And then the interception in the end zone at the end of the half, you're already in field goal range. You got to live to fight another day. I know he kind of, they got pushed back a little bit, which affected the throw. But in my opinion, that was just a bad decision. Baker even said that after the game. He was really trying to, thread the needle, really try to squeeze it into a tight window, which he probably shouldn't have. And it was just a couple of head-scratching moments. So, again, the context of when I sent that tweet was important because
Yeah.
Baker was playing like Jameis Winston. But I want to reiterate to everybody, Baker has been really good this season. I don't think for the entire season where the Bucs are 7-6, for the entire season, Baker has not been playing like Jameis Winston.
Yes.
Just in the end of the first quarter and all of the second quarter is when we saw those similarities. I don't expect it moving forward. I expect him to bounce back because that's what he does. And great comment from Richard Taroka says, Baker, be like, dear Lord, deliver me from second quarter mistakes. And second quarter has been an issue for the Buccaneers a lot of times this season. So I just want to clarify that. I know people are still commenting, and I think, hours later, you forget, oh, you tweeted that in the second quarter, and the context and everything like that is important. So, I just want to bring that up. I thought it'd be a good conversation to have today.
Sure.
And Bucs fans are very passionate about their quarterback, as they should be. So, that's my roll call for today.
As Sal says, all facts, 100%. You're exactly right, Matt. You are right, Matt. We're hearing it from everybody. Good stuff.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Good stuff. Yep. This is a fun place to be. It just is.
Yeah,
I mean,
first place.
it is. It's been a minute, right? And it didn't look like this was going to happen. I remember, Matt, you were passionate about, hey, let's just show up the whole NFC South talk, okay? I mean, until it happens, and it's happened, and it's crazy that this season has played out the same way it did last year. 3-1 start, collapse in the middle. And then, a furious finish at the end. And we'll see if this team can finish off this season as well as they did last year. Maybe even better. They have a chance to, what are they at? 7 wins now? They have a chance to get to 11 wins this year. If they win out, if they stumble one time, they can get to 10 wins. That'll be an improvement over what they did last year. And remember, the Glazers, Matt and I were there to listen for it. The Glazers kind of ominously said, with an open-ended statement, well, you want to see improvement from Todd Bowles' team this year. And it was very kind of loosely worded and open to interpretation. But in the what have you done for me lately, results-oriented business of the NFL, that means making the playoffs and winning in the playoffs, because that's what they did last year. They won the division. They won the wild card game. And so whether this year's wildcard game is at Raymond James Stadium as NFC South champions, or they have to go on the road and win a wildcard game, they had to do that, Matt, back in 2020 when the Saints won the division. Yeah. That's what is, I think, expected from this team. And yes, there are a slew of injuries that have impacted that. And maybe that factors into Todd Bowles' job security. We'll see. Lots of football left to play, 4 games, including the Chargers game on Sunday.
A lot of football, like you said, entertainment. It's great that, they have so much to play for at the end of the season. There are, half the teams across the league, their season's done. They're talking about the draft. Bucs fans have been there before years ago, but it's great that they're playing, for their playoff lives. And one thing that does not have any room for interpretation is the greatness of Celsius energy drinks, the best energy drinks around town. Of course, Celsius is the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. We love all of their flavors. I'm specifically a big fan of the Arctic Vibe. You can check out all the flavors they got, like the sparkling watermelon lemonade as well. Go on over to their website if you need to know where to find a Celsius energy drink. Go to the Celsius store locator, punch in your address, and tell you the closest place where you can pick one up. Might be a Walmart, a Publix, a Stop and Shop, or your bodega.
Bodega.
And after you keep going to your bodega and you love it and you want more, you can purchase it in bulk over on Amazon with the subscribe and save. I'd recommend the variety pack because there's so many fantastic flavors of Celsius. You can have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. Just make sure you drink at Celsius Energy Drinks, the official energy drinks of PewterReport.com. Scott, we got some super chats to get to, so let's get it rocking and rolling. Thank you to everybody that have been patiently waiting with your super chats, and thanks for the great participation once again in roll call. We appreciate each and every one of you. So we'll start it off with Ryan Giles. Thanks for the $4.99 super chat. Says, have you ever seen Mike Evans that upset on the sideline? I loved seeing that fire from one of the leaders. Yeah, so we talked about this on the post-game show a little bit yesterday. There was, they showed like a slow-mo camera angle of Mike Evans getting really fired up and angry. And we've seen Mike get like that before, but it's typically about himself.
Yeah.
Or it's something that he did or that he didn't do, whatever the case may be.
or that
You
Marshawn
don't-
Lattimore did, right?
Oh, yes, that as well. He will fight other
Yeah.
players from other teams in
Right.
defense of his teammates, because
Yeah.
he's the ultimate team guy. But this one was different, and it was on the play where the Raiders converted a 4th down. It looked like Jamel Dean could have got a stop or knocked the ball away or at least make the tackle, and he didn't. So not totally sure if he was yelling specifically at Jamel Dean. Maybe he was just trying to get the defense going a little bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good to see Mike worked up.
Yeah.
I mean, there are diva wide receivers across the league. Mike Evans is not one of them, but he's also a leader on this team. So if he wants to get a little fired up, I'm all for it.
I am too. And, he's a prideful guy. I mean, I think he knows that maybe the sun might be setting on this 1,000-yard streak that he's had. And, he had 5 targets. I'm sure he would love to have 10 targets in the game yesterday and more yards and more catches. Because usually when that happens, the Bucs win, right? I mean, when the Bucs score touchdowns, with Mike Evans catching those touchdowns, Tampa Bay does pretty well. And so he just wants to contribute to the team. And hopefully those two things coincide: a playoff berth, an NFC South title again, and a 1,000-yard streak for Mike. But the math is working against him. I mean, he's had one 100-yard game. He's going to have to explode in one of these games and have like a monster 150, 180-yard game. And Matt, this offense is not really vertically based. We did see some run after catch from him yesterday with a nice hurdle. That
was awesome. That's a great picture too.
Yeah, it really was. But the problem is we're going to have to see more of those type plays down the stretch. He's capable of that. That's the cool thing. Like don't count Mike out yet, right? But it is getting close. And trust me, even though this would sting a little bit because he does have an appreciation for NFL records, and certainly he has set the one that he has with the 10 1,000-yard seasons to start an NFL career. He doesn't want to see that happen to sunset, but at the same time, he is a team first guy, and he'll take the playoffs over this record. He would rather have a playoff trip for the team than this 1,000-yard record once again, and then not being in the postseason.
He would rather have a second Super Bowl ring than an 11th season with 1,000 receiving yards.
No doubt.
And the stats aren't there for Mike, but he hasn't really lost a step. He just he missed time because of an injury, but the athleticism is still there. His importance to the offense is still very there. So you can at least hang your hat on that. It will be very difficult. In a perfect world, the Falcons keep losing and the Bucs find a way to clinch the division maybe in the second to last game of the season and then just go hog wild for the last game trying to get
just throw the ball.
Numbers. But exactly. It'll be very difficult, but not counting them out just yet.
Yep.
Shout out to Payne Gusto. Thank you for being a Pewter Report YouTube channel member
Appreciate
for 4 months now. And Payne Gusto says, football is right again with us on top of the NFC South. # Go Bucs. Now let's ball out. It was fun watching the chase. Let's see if they can stay on top of the mountain because they were the hunters. Now they are the hunted. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Hughes44 with the $2 super chat. Thank you very much. Says Scott prayed for you last night. Hope you're feeling better.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Some tough times for our family right now, but we're getting through there. Yeah. Appreciate the prayers. Thank you very much. Very much.
And football is a good distraction.
It is
at times. Paul Bowen, thank you very much for the $4.99 super chat. Said, seemed like we got ahead and tried to pass the ball more, maybe to feed Mike, but somehow got off script and almost blew it.
Yeah, so there's two schools of thought, and I kind of wrote about this in the Bucs mailbag this morning on pewterreport.com. I'll drop that in the chat in just a minute here. But the gist of it is this. It's like, what do you do if you're an offensive coordinator, right? You're up 14-0. Baker's 9 of 11. He's dealing, right? 110 yards. Yeah. If you want to, pace it out, he's on pace for 8 touchdowns and 440 yards, right? If you want to say, all right, this is what he's done in the first quarter. If he's on pace to do this, the rest of the quarters, he's having a monster game. So what do you want to do? Do you want to sit there and say, okay, we're up 14-0. We're having our way. We can do whatever we want, it looks like, for the first quarter. Do we want to run the ball now and go away from what's working, try to establish the run? Well, in hindsight, yeah, because if you had known, if Liam Cohen and Baker Mayfield had the crystal ball out and would have said, yeah, in the second quarter, it's going to look like New Orleans where he's going to throw 2 picks and have a fumble and the Raiders are going to get right back in it, then yeah, maybe you run the ball more than the 4 times for 18 yards that you did. But they didn't do that. And it's hard to fault Liam Cohen for maybe doing that, Matt, because they were doing whatever they wanted in the passing game.
Yeah.
Right? So it's tough. Like again, in hindsight, you say, yeah, run the ball and get the running game going and all that. And that's the right answer. But what happened, again, without the crystal ball is also the right answer. You keep doing what's working. Trust me. As a Pop Warner play caller and on the defensive side, so many times, like I remember there's a game where this team ran end arounds twice and they got like 15 yards on one and they got 8 yards on the other, right? And they're averaging 12 yards per play every time they did that. It was a first down. Yeah. We couldn't stop it. They ran it twice. Thank God they didn't run it again because we really didn't have an answer. The kid was as fast as could be, right? And you're talking about little kids here that are stationary, waiting for the ball to be snapped. And one kid is going, 100 miles an hour behind the line of scrimmage, getting the ball. And it's like sometimes the best play calls on defense are the offensive coordinators going away from what's working.
Yes.
There is something to run it until they stop it. And so many times at all levels, offensive coordinators help the defense out by not continuing to go with what's working. It just kind of backfired a little bit yesterday because Baker, I think, got spooked by that interception on the screen pass.
Yeah.
And it kind of, got out of control there in the second quarter.
Yeah, it's a little Monday morning quarterbacking to a degree because they were so successful. Why would you mix it up? Like, what's the old saying? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right. And the sequencing is very important as well. Again, on Baker's first interception, first play was a run to Rachaad White. Second play was an incompletion. Third down, you're going to throw it, and they got the first down. Then this is where they got a little pass happy. Well, at least on first down, Baker scrambled. Yeah. Bucky ran it on second down, so you had to throw it on third down, and that's where the interception happened. The next drive with the fumble, they only had 4 plays. So if you got a couple more first downs, maybe that changes. And then you went 3 and out. So, again, the sequencing, they did try to run it. It backfired on third down in must-pass situations. And where the Bucs have been really good is when they get into that 3rd and 3 type of situation where there is still the threat of running the football, but you can obviously throw it too because it's third down. And they had a couple of more 3rd and longs than usual.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and part of that too was the penalties they had, the false starts, whatever, that got them, behind the sticks a bit.
Thank you to David Van Dunn for this $4.99 super chat. Says, "What's up, Matt? Welcome back to the weekday pods. SR, missed you last week. How you feeling about this Sunday, fellas? Any word on Bucky's injury status?" Yeah, so we mentioned Bucky's before, but in case people are just jumping into the show, Bucky, his back tightened up. That's why they took him out of the game yesterday. They're going to try to loosen it up all week long. So it's literally going to be a day-by-day cases. Is Bucky practicing? Is he out there?
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the case with Bucky Irving. As far as how we're feeling for the Chargers game, of course, we'll preview it on Wednesday.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the best matchup for the Bucs, just the way that the Chargers like to ground and pound, and they're very physical and they're beefy and they'll keep running the football. But styles make fights, so I'm excited for it.
Yeah. What I like about this is the Chargers don't really have an explosive offense, right? They don't just light up the scoreboard with a bunch of points. So I think this works in Tampa Bay's favor because they have, they've done a pretty good job against some lesser, teams when it's come to, we haven't seen the 30-point games that we saw against Baltimore and the Atlanta Falcons a couple times, the Chiefs got to 30 in overtime, right? So those seem to be a thing of the past. I mean, hopefully, knock on wood, right? And what we've seen is 7 points against the Giants, 23 points in Carolina, 13 points yesterday. So some lesser offenses kind of helping Todd Bowles' wounded defense out by not being that prolific. And you look at some of the points scored here by the Chargers, and I'm just going to run down the Chargers scores here just for the sake of time.
Yep.
22 points against the Raiders, 26 points against the Carolina Panthers. Both of those are wins. 10 losses I should say 10 points in losses to Pittsburgh and Kansas City, 23 points in a win at Denver, 15 points in a loss to Arizona, 26 points in a win against the Saints, 27 points against the win against the Browns, 27 points versus Tennessee in a win, 34 points in a win over the Cincinnati Bengals. That's the highest score that they've had, just one 30-point game this year. And then 23 points in the loss to Baltimore, 17 in the win over the Falcons, 17 in the loss to Kansas City yesterday. They lost 19-17. So this is a team that doesn't have a lot of upper 20s and 30-point games.
Right.
They're more of a conservative offense. That's kind of Jim Harbaugh's MO. And for a team that has struggled in keeping opponents out of the end zone, like Tampa Bay, that's a good thing, because I like Liam Cohen's offense and the potential there against a rugged, hard-nosed, tough Chargers defense. I like their chances better than kind of more of a lower-scoring Chargers offense just having a day against Todd Bowles' defense. It seems like the Tampa Bay's defense has got some things figured out a little bit more.
Totally fair. And I think the availability of Ladd McConkey, who did not play in last night's game, that will be a big factor as well, because that really helps their passing game. Shout out to Paul, a.k.a. OG Baker Bro. Thanks for being a Pewter Report YouTube channel member now for 4 months. Says, no disrespect to you, Matt. That's all right. None taken. I'm open to fair criticism. But on game night, you said talking about Baker, his interceptions and fumble were inexcusable. Interception 1 was a magnificent play by the defense.
True.
The fumble had as much to do with the offensive line. Interception 2 was inexcusable. Be fair. We talk a lot, so sometimes it blends together. I thought I was most critical about the fumble. And if you want to blame the offensive line, sure, that's fair. But the point I was making is, Baker saw the defender coming. It's still the fault of the offensive line for not blocking. But when you know the play is done, then the goal is to hold on to the football and protect the football and live to fight another day. The fact that he saw it coming, he hunched and got ready to take on the tackle and still lost the football. That's where I had a big issue. The second interception was really bad. That was inexcusable. If I said that about the first one, I would take that one back for sure, because it was more of an athletic play. But nonetheless, thanks for paying attention.
The other thing about the second one, and I kind of put this in the Pewter Report group chat too, it looked like it was a terrible overthrow. What was he doing thinking of throwing that ball? And maybe the coverage, he shouldn't have thrown that to Cade Otton in the end zone, but he literally had Cody Mauch hit him right as he threw the ball. So maybe it wasn't the best decision to go there anyways. But as he was throwing the ball, the Raiders defensive tackle was driving Cody Mauch literally into Baker. That's why the ball kind of just sailed and hung up there forever and allowed Jack Jones to make that play in the end zone, because it was not just Baker's I got all day to throw and I'm just going to chuck it willy-nilly into the end zone. He saw something he liked and went there. Maybe should have not gone there, but he did get hit as he threw it. And not making excuses for Baker, interception all the way around, but it wasn't like that was a play where he was simply unimpeded and had a clear throwing lane. He probably shouldn't have thrown the ball to begin with.
Yeah, that's true as well, and it's important to paint the whole picture.
Yeah.
By the way, shout out to Drillman32. Thank you very much
appreciate
for
that.
Becoming a Pewter Report YouTube channel member. We really appreciate that.
Yeah. And if you're wondering what all this talk about Pewter Report channel members is all about, well, I'm here to tell you. We have a way that you can show your support for Pewter Report. We know that all of you probably think, gosh, what am I going to get Scott and Matt for Christmas this year? Well, nothing. You don't have to. We're grown adults. We don't need anything. But if you want to help our channel, you certainly can. And you can do that by becoming a Pewter Report channel member here on Pewter Report TV. There are 4 different membership levels. Pewter People members and Pewter Pro members get access to loyalty badges and custom emojis, and those Pewter Pro members get early access to the videos that we put out. Pewter Premier members and Pewter Platinum members get exclusive Q&A videos on Friday. That's our Pewter Insider chats that we do typically 1:30 on Fridays. And those are for $9.99 and $24.99 per month. We have free Pewter Report merchandise that is going out later this month for our Pewter Platinum members, plus a twice annual Platinum member meetup in Tampa with the Pewter Report staff and with Bucs personnel. So we're looking forward to that as well. That'll be in February after the Bucs season is over. And then, of course, we will have another one around the start of training camp next year. So this is a great way for you to help support the Pewter Report TV channel and our efforts here. We appreciate you helping us grow. And if you are a business owner or someone who's in charge of marketing for your business, we have a couple of new advertising partners coming on this month, and we can help your business score new customers. Advertise with us here on the Pewter Report podcast. We reach hundreds of thousands of Bucs fans in the Tampa area, in Florida, and across the country on the Pewter Report podcast. We have a website that's hitting 1.5 million unique visitors on pewterreport.com, and social media channels that total over 100,000 followers. So email me at sr@pewterreport.com if you want your business to get some more business.
That's right. And on the topic of our YouTube channel, thank you very much to our Pewter Platinum members. Scott Federico, Rathel Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, Eric McMillan, and Zach Jarvis. We really appreciate all of your support. Love doing the Pewter Insider on Friday as well, where Pewter Platinum, along with Pewter Premier channel members, get to join in. So thank you all very much for your support. And shout out to our Pewter Premier channel members as well. We're going to let the ticker tape scroll at the bottom because there is a lot of you. But nonetheless, we thank you all for your support of pewterreport.com.
Yeah. And we had a great turnout today, as we always do in roll call.
Yes.
It's always better on Victory Monday, but it's still a Monday nevertheless, and we always love doing roll call with you. So, Matt, while you were giving us your opinion about Baker Mayfield, we were putting up a lot of people here.
Bakersfield.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to kick things off with Bakersfield here from Drillman 32. Just became that Pewter Report channel member. Greatly appreciate it. Staying in California with Richard Taroka, Beverly Hills, California. Scotty J from Tulsa. Appreciate you showing up. And kind of in the same neck of the woods, Wichita, Kansas is where Sacktown is. We have got Kells 808 from Hawaii. Aloha.
Very cool.
You Pewter peeps. And then sticking out west, Ryan Gills from Rock Springs, Wyoming. And then we're going to be in Mobile, Alabama. Matt, I haven't even shown you the place we're staying at. It's fantastic. Booked a place for Mobile, Alabama. And Paul Bowen is watching, a Pewter Report channel member from Montgomery, Alabama. And speaking of Mobile, BAA is also there. We might do it like a little meetup for our Mobile peeps at the Senior Bowl.
Yes.
We might do like a little meetup and buy a round of drinks or something for some of you Buck fans that might be in and around the Mobile area for the Senior Bowl, because we're going to be there. And then we have a couple other people that I wanted to give a shout out to. Dwayne Maynard from Greeley, Colorado. And Derek, who is in the Philippines, has a Bucs Charger party, 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., 20-cent tequila. That sounds good. I might hop on a plane and get there.
Derek.
That's pretty fantastic. Snowy, Duluth, Minnesota is where Dritz 924 is. Not snowy down here, thankfully. Gabriel Polo, Hudson, Florida, go Bucs. We have another Florida member here, Rathel Gordon, one of our Pewter Platinum members in Callahan. And then last but not least, Will the Brewer, listening at Hailstorm Brewing in Tinley Park, Illinois. That's awesome. I'm not having a beer today, but I am having a Mellow. It's a Mellow Monday, so it's a fantastic seltzer. Check out mellowseltzer.com to find out where you can get these. These are fantastic.
Yes, they are. Let's get to a couple more super chats. You all have been very generous today. Thank you so much. To Amazement 717 with this $9.99 super chat says, so Bucs basically can't lose 2 of the last 4. Bucs just need to go 3-1. I doubt the Falcons run the table, so 3 out of 4 should get the South. Now Bowles returning is a different scenario. Well, it's interesting because, yes, the Falcons have played quite poorly. There's no doubt about that. And I think everyone's banking on the Commanders beating the Falcons. I don't think that's like a guarantee the way everyone has been talking about it. We do have to remember 2 other games that the Falcons have. Their next 2, they're about to play the Raiders.
Yeah.
And they also play against the Giants, who are 2 of the worst teams in the league. So as bad as the Falcons have been, they should win those games.
Those
so
could be get-well games for the Falcons, you know.
Very much so. So if you're the Bucs, I mean, the safest way is just to win out, right? Because then there's no way the Falcons. But 3-1, sure, nice.
Yeah.
I wouldn't count my chickens before they hatch, or whatever that saying is. But
yeah, I'm with you on that.
Bucs Basement, thank you very much for this $10 super chat. Says, I get a win is a win, but we have got to stop celebrating mediocrity. Making the playoffs at barely 500 is nothing to celebrate, and it just anchors us to an awful head coach for 1 year. I think because the Bucs won so significantly in their playoff game last year against the Eagles, and then really went toe-to-toe with the Lions as well, it opens the door for a little more optimism, because you can see how good this team can be when they're firing on all cylinders and they're playing up to their ability. They can be
and they beat the Lions this year, and they beat the Eagles, and they beat the Commanders. So, we have to acknowledge those wins. Yes, it's not recency bias. It happened way in September. This is a different team, and other teams have gotten better and worse since then. I get that, but you can't deny history. That did happen, and happened within this year, right? So having said that, well, what is mediocrity? Matt, let me just ask you. If this team loses to the Chargers, but then wins out, right? They finished 10-7. Is that a mediocre record? No, that's exactly what we thought this team was going to do. Every single Pewter reporter predicted 10-7 this year. And right now, they're on pace for it, okay? Is 11-6 mediocre? If they run the table, win the next 4 games, they'll be 11-6. That's one of the better records in the NFL, not just the NFC. So we'll have to see how this plays out. Yes, if this team does lose a couple of games down the stretch, finishes 9-8, and ends up winning the division again because the Falcons continue to falcon, then maybe this statement has a little bit more, reasonableness to it. But I think 10 wins, 11 wins, that's progress. That's improvement. Yeah. We'll see. Does it anchor this team to bowls? Not necessarily. Listen, folks, I covered this team when they fired John Gruden after winning 9 games, and granted, he missed out in the playoffs. I covered this team when they fired Tony Dungy after making the playoffs 3 straight years. And is that right? 90? Yeah, 3 straight years. And he finished 9-7. So with Todd Bowles, I think if he's going to stay, and a lot depends on what's going to happen with Liam Cohen. If Liam Cohen ends up staying, then you keep Todd Bowles and you ride on. But I think you tell Todd Bowles you need to make some coaching changes on your defensive staff. There's got to be some new young blood coming in here with these players, because these defensive coaches, I'm just not a fan of a lot of them. So we'll see what happens.
11 wins is for sure an improvement, and the Bucs, they almost have to get to 10 wins, because they got to bring some respect to the NFC South, or bring some respect back to that division. Because I think a lot of people look at the NFC South and kind of look at it as a joke a little bit. Like when you had an 8-9 team get in and then a 9-8 team. So bring some respect back to the NFC South. Amazement 717, thanks again for another super chat. This one of $4.99 says, if Bowles is gone, what type of coach fits this team? Or promote Cohen and let him pick his own staff. I think Cohen's the number one option in this hypothetical. And you super chatted us, so of course we'll entertain it. If they didn't go the Cohen route, either an offensive coach for sure, or an established guy like Mike Vrabel. Like I just think having some credibility and history like Mike Vrabel does, I think would be a good fit. Especially Vrabel and Baker Mayfield together. I think that would be. They should get their own TV show. Like, that's how entertaining. I agree. I think the 3 guys would be Liam Cohen, Todd Monken, and Mike Vrabel. Those are the 3 Those are the 3 guys that would be in the mix here as potential replacements for Todd Bowles. Should he retire, or should the team want to go in a different direction? Yeah, and Monken obviously history with Baker, history obviously in Tampa. So with Mike and Chris, he was the receivers coach. Yes. Richie P, thank you very, very much for this $20 super chat. Says, wow, thank you. Any chance Chris Godwin and Servassier Dennis come back late in the playoffs, much like Vita Vea did back in 2020 when they won the Super Bowl? I don't think so. I don't think Chris is going to be ready ready for that. That doesn't seem like it. Servassier, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that. He had shoulder surgery Yeah.
that he needed to get repaired. Usually that's months long. Now he did have that early in the season. I want to say it was after the Eagles game, right? So that's early October. Early. Yeah, I don't think so. And I think too with him, you want him healthy for next year because who knows what's going to happen. KJ Britt is in a contract year. I don't think this team re-signs him. Levante David, he was great in the first quarter, had the sack, had the fumble recovery, and then he just is kind of wearing out throughout games. And listen, it's no knock on Levante. He's going to be 35 on January 1st, right? I think that's his birthday, January 1st.
It's a physical sport.
Yeah, so at some point in time, there's not going to be a 54 out there named Levante David on the field, and there probably won't be another 54. They'll probably retire his jersey as he should.
It'll be there. It'll be
on the stadium. Yeah,
yes,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so I think Servais is a starter at inside linebacker next year, and then they got to find another one, whoever that is. And maybe it's Levante, maybe he comes back, but you can't bank on that.
No, you can't. And Servais, he's obviously not in uniform, but he's been around at practice with the guys you're going and watching. You don't always see that with someone who's on injured reserve. It's going to be out for a while. So he still very much wants to be as involved as possible.
Just a football junkie,
Yeah,
he just is.
If only almost stay healthy. He's a good player. He just needs to stay healthy.
No doubt. Almost like I'm a junkie for the mozzarella logs at walk-ons.
Game day at walk-ons is just different, and it starts with the way our teammates prep each dish from our scratch menu. No shortcuts. We are hand cutting every single mozzarella log straight from the block. Hand peeling, stuffing, and bacon wrapping each voodoo shrimp. Hand carving ribeyes for our steaks and po' boys. And hand slicing, then tossing our boneless wings and our house-made sauces. With wall-to-wall TVs and food like this, why would you want to watch anywhere else? That's game day. The walk-ons way.
Still time to enjoy this Victory Monday at Walk-Ons. After right, happy hour goes all the way till close. It started at 3, it's going to close. So make sure you go there for your $3 happy hour pours, $3.99 domestic pints, $4 house wines, $5.49 22-ounce domestic drafts, and a bunch of starters for cheap. Then you have all day happy hour tomorrow. That's Tuesday, including $5 Tito's all day long, and then a couple of happy hours from 3 to 6 and 9 to close Wednesday and Thursday, and Friday from 3 to 6, another happy hour at Walk-Ons. 3 locations, Wesley Chapel, Midtown Tampa, Lakeland. Go to walkons.com for more information. And we're going to tell you more information about the Bucs-Chargers game on Wednesday. That's right. It is the must-win game alert. Bucs-Chargers preview, 4 o'clock here on Pewter Report TV. Our next podcast coming at you on Wednesday. And, Matt, we have plenty more at pewterreport.com.
Yes, we do. So make sure you follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment as well. Before we sign off, we have one last comment and super chat. So thank you very much to LDBC's Most Wanted for this $4.99 super chat. Says, we're being hard on them. Panthers just took the Eagles and Chiefs down to the wire. Raiders did the same to the Chiefs. They are playing to win. Well, in fairness, the Chiefs take every team down to the wire, it feels like.
True. That is true. Yes. Listen, it's the NFL. It's a field goal league on most games on Sundays. That's what makes it exciting is the parity in this league. It's real. And you just want to have a good kicker like Chase McLaughlin, who's money McLaughlin. So we appreciate him and we'll see about the punting, Matt.
Oh man,
Jack Browning was an adventure. He was an adventure all by himself. And Todd Bowles was asked about him at the end of his press conference, and he just started laughing. He's like, "We're gonna chalk it up to rookie jitters, but we'll see." I wouldn't be surprised if they add another punter to the practice squad to give them another guy in the hopper just in case Browning isn't the guy. Holy smokes! Can you imagine 4 punters? What in the world is Josh Capo going to think, man? If this team goes to 4 punters,
and none of them due to injury. Sometimes injuries happen. You need someone else, but 4 punters, just none due to injury, is crazy. So we'll see on Wednesday if there's a new punter or if the Bucs make a move, either by the end of today or maybe sometime tomorrow. But we'll talk about that on Wednesday's show. So for Scott Reynolds, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you on Wednesday for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.